I never considered myself the type to cling to resentment. My beliefs were anchored in fairness, compassion, and the restorative power of forgiveness. Yet those principles, much like the trust one placed in my marriage, shattered one unforgettable Saturday night at a sophisticated soiree hosted by a colleague of my wife. The evening started with an aura of charm. Clara and I, united by nearly a decade of matrimony, weren't perfect, but I believed we were true partners. We stepped into the venue arm in arm, her emerald dress shimmering under the light of an opulent chandelier. Her chestnut hair flowed over her shoulders as she laughed, drawing admiring glances with every movement. She was radiant as always, and a quiet sense of pride warmed me, knowing she was mine. The gathering hummed with soft conversation and the clink of wine glasses. Clara introduced me to various co-workers, including Ethan, a tall, broad-chested man with a confident grin that hinted he expected the world to bow to his charisma. She'd spoken of him before, a new member of her team, sharp, ambitious, and undeniably captivating. He was polite initially, though I noticed his eyes lingering too long on Clara's silhouette. I brushed it off, attributing it to my own overthinking. But as the night progressed, a heavy unease settled in my gut. Clara and Ethan kept drifting toward each other, their laughter cutting through the party's murmur like a shared secret. I gripped my glass, offering strained smiles during conversations I scarcely followed, my gaze repeatedly pulled back to her. She seemed to revel in his attention, her face alight, not from the wine, but from something more profound. I told myself to stay composed. Envy wasn't becoming. Clara was my wife. We shared a life, a legacy. No man, no matter how charming or self-assured, could undo what we'd forged. That conviction crumbled in a heartbeat. Returning from the bar with a new drink, I caught sight of them near the terrace. Clara stood slightly angled, her laughter ringing out. Ethan's hand rested on her lower back, far too intimate for decorum. Then, as if the world slowed, I saw his fingers slide beneath the hem of her dress. My veins turned to ice. She didn't flinch, didn't push him away. Instead, she tilted her head, nibbling her lip in a way I knew all too well. My glass nearly slipped from my hand. I stood frozen, my mind reeling. Was this real? Had I misinterpreted the scene? But the look in her eyes and the smirk on his face left no room for doubt. Fury roared through me like a tempest, my hands trembling with the urge to charge over and wipe that smug grin off his face. But I didn't. Instead, I turned, left the gathering without a word, and began plotting my retribution. The days that followed were a blur of forced calm. I had to keep my feelings hidden, needed time to plan. Clara acted as if nothing had occurred, her unchanged behavior twisting the knife deeper. Confronting her would only bring denials and evasions. I needed proof, leverage, and above all, a strategy. I began digging. Clara wasn't as careful as she believed. A quick check of her phone while she bathed revealed a string of suggestive texts with Ethan. It wasn't a fleeting mistake. It had been ongoing for months. The betrayal hit like a freight train, but I swallowed the pain, letting it hone my resolve. Ethan, I discovered, wasn't just a treacherous colleague. He was married. His wife, Abigail, a reserved but kind woman I'd met briefly at a company event, deserved this no more than I did. I reached out to her anonymously, sharing just enough to spark her suspicions. The foe of my foe became my strongest ally. With Abigail's assistance, the plan took shape effortlessly. We arranged a dinner party, inviting Clara and Ethan under the pretense of celebrating some vague professional milestone of hers. Clara, unaware, was thrilled, especially since Ethan and his wife would be there. She even asked me to select the wine, a request that nearly drew a bitter chuckle. The night arrived, and I played the gracious host. Abigail and I exchanged subtle glances, our shared disdain forming a temporary alliance. Clara and Ethan, oblivious to the brewing storm, shared smiles and covert looks, their arrogance fueling my determination. Halfway through the meal, I excused myself to retrieve a special dessert from the kitchen. That was the cue. Abigail joined me shortly after, leaving Clara and Ethan at the table, likely basking in their false sense of security. Unbeknownst to them, the dining room was wired. Hidden cameras and microphones captured every whisper, every fleeting touch in stark detail. Abigail had suggested the idea, and I'd set it all up myself, my hands steady despite the rage burning within. Returning to the table, I raised my glass, proposing a toast to loyalty and honesty. Clara's smile flickered for a moment, but quickly returned as she lifted her glass with the others. Dessert was served, but the air grew heavy with unspoken truths. Finally, I set my fork down and leaned back. "I have something to reveal," I said, my voice steady but firm. Clara's eyes met mine, a hint of unease crossing her face. I picked up a remote and pressed a button. The television on the wall sprang to life, displaying a paused video. Clara's face paled as she recognized the scene. The party, the terrace, her and Ethan's indiscretion frozen in time. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice quaking. "Evidence," I replied simply. I pressed play. The room fell silent as the video played, every incriminating moment exposed. Abigail's expression grew stern, her eyes locked on Ethan, whose confidence crumbled, his face ashen. Clara turned to me, tears welling, but I raised a hand before she could speak. "No justifications," I said, my tone cold. "This isn't about salvaging anything. This is about accountability." Abigail stood, her chair scraping sharply against the floor. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling with controlled fury, "expect to hear from my attorney. Don't come home tonight." Ethan tried to object, but her glare silenced him. He slumped in his chair, defeated. Clara sobbed, begging for forgiveness, claiming it was a mistake, insignificant. Her words felt hollow, her tears falling on ears that no longer cared. "This isn't just about us," I said, my voice resolute. "It's about honoring our marriage, yourself, and you threw it all away for a cheap thrill." I stood, looking at her one last time. "I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. The papers are prepared. You'll leave with only what you brought into this marriage. I've been thorough." Her sobs grew louder, but I felt nothing. The love I'd once had for her had hardened into an impenetrable wall. The aftermath was swift and unrelenting. Abigail followed through, filing for divorce and exposing Ethan's actions to their social and professional circles. He was forced to resign, his reputation in tatters. Clara tried to reach out in the weeks that followed, but I blocked her calls, emails, and pleas for reconciliation. The idea of rebuilding held no allure. My focus turned to starting anew, free from the venom of betrayal. I moved to a new city, took a new job, and found solace in the clarity of moving forward. The ordeal had been agonizing, but it also liberated me. I was no longer tethered by doubt or misplaced loyalty. Revenge couldn't erase the past, but it could level the playing field.